before the thunder of guns shook the earth, before trenches scarred the green fields of Europe, there was silence. A silence heavy with fear, ambition, and pride. It was the calm before the greatest storm humanity had ever faced. The year was 1914, but the fuse had been burning for decades. Europe at the turn of the century looked peaceful on the surface. Its cities glittered with electricity, grand railways, and opera houses. Science and industry had ushered in a new age of confidence. Yet, behind the elegance lay rivalry. The continent was split among mighty powers: Britain, France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. Each guarded its empire like a lion circling territory, suspicious of every shadow. The peace that held them together was not born of friendship. It was a peace of fear and calculation, a delicate balance of power. Every empire sought dominance, every monarch dreamed of eternal glory, and every soldier, every worker, every farmer stood unknowingly upon a powder keg. For 40 years the nation waited, not merely to fight, but to avenge. Then there was Germany, young, energetic, and hungry. Unified only in 1871 under Otto von Bismarck. Germany's rise was astonishing. Its factories roared with industry. Its cities blazed with innovation. But its ruler, Kaiser Wilhelm II, was restless and insecure. He wanted Germany's place in the sun. He envied Britain's empire, France's culture, and feared encirclement by jealous neighbors. The dawn of the 20th century brought marvels, airplanes, automobiles, telegraphs, yet the same factories that built engines and radios also forged rifles and shells. Between 1900 and 1914, military spending across Europe doubled. Germany built fleets of dreadnought battleships. Britain answered with even larger ones. France fortified its borders. Russia expanded its railways to move troops faster. Even small nations armed themselves, preparing for a war everyone swore would never come. In theory, this web of promises maintained balance. In reality, it meant that a spark anywhere could set all of Europe ablaze. An assassination in the Balkans, a border clash in Africa, even a misinterpreted telegram. Any of these could drag the continent into war. Across Europe, monarchs and ministers clung to their ambitions. Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, proud, theatrical, haunted by insecurity, believed war would forge his people into greatness. Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria-Hungary, old, weary, yet stubborn, refused to let his empire crumble quietly. Tsar Nicholas II, gentle but indecisive, faced growing unrest at home and saw foreign war as a unifying distraction. Britain's King George V, France's Président Poincaré, Italy's King Victor Emmanuel, all danced upon the same stage, bound by pride, protocol, and destiny. Diplomats met in gilded halls, signing treaties with ink and arrogance, unaware that their words would soon drown in blood. The summer of 1914 was beautiful. In Paris, cafes overflowed with laughter. In Berlin, orchestras played in open squares. In London, children ran through green parks beneath a warm sun. Europe's elite vacationed on beaches, confident that civilization had reached its golden age. Yet beneath the surface, railways hummed with mobilization plans, and generals rehearsed for war. Far away, in a provincial city called Sarajevo, plans of a different kind were unfolding. June 28, 1914, a date that would echo through history. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie arrived in Sarajevo for an official visit. The city, recently annexed by Austria-Hungary, simmered with tension. Among its citizens were young men who believed their land should belong to Serbia, not Vienna. A secret nationalist group, the Black Hand, plotted to send a message the world could not ignore. They smuggled pistols and grenades across the border. They positioned themselves along the Archduke's route, their mission: to kill him, whatever the cost. As the royal couple rode through crowded streets in an open car, cheers and flags filled the air. But in the shadows, the assassins waited. In Vienna, shock turned to fury. In Berlin, leaders urged restraint, then whispered encouragement. In St. Petersburg, Russia vowed to protect Serbia. In Paris and London, diplomats prayed the crisis could be contained. But the machinery of alliances had already begun to move. Within weeks, Europe would be at war. The peace of a century was shattered by a single bullet. The shot heard around the world. Music swells, then fades into distant cannon fire. History remembers the First World War as a conflict born of assassination, but the assassination was only the spark. The true cause lay deeper, in fear, in pride, in the unrelenting struggle for power. As the summer of 1914 ended, the lights of Europe went out, one by one, and no one knew when they would shine again. It began on a quiet summer morning. Cheering crowds, the air was heavy with hatred, resentment, and destiny. Toi's empire. He was a symbol of continuity, and some believed that if he died, their nation would be reborn. Just 6 years earlier, Austria-Hungary had annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina, once Ottoman province, now unwilling parts of the empire. The annexation humiliated Serbia, which dreamed of leading all South Slavs to independence. His wife Sophie insisted on joining him, despite the risks. Instead, it would display how fragile that unity truly was. Most were barely out of their teens. They had smuggled weapons from Belgrade. Among them was Gavrilo Princip, a frail, sickly. They scattered along the Archduke's motorcade route, waiting for their moment. At 10:10 a.m., the royal convoy began moving through Sarajevo's Apelki, a line of 6 open cars driving slowly beside the river. Crowds cheered, unaware of the danger that lurked among them. Panic, screams, smoke. The river was shallow. He was dragged out and beaten by an angry mob. The rest of the assassins froze. An hour later, after visiting the wounded at the hospital, Franz Ferdinand decided to return to the city hall. The officials begged him to stop. As the cars rolled back toward the city, the lead vehicle turned down Franz Joseph Street, the wrong street straight toward Gavrilo Princip. Princip had given up earlier. A stalled engine, a helpless target. Princip stepped forward, raised his pistol, and fired 2 shots. One bullet struck Sophie in the abdomen. Franz Ferdinand cried out, "Sophie!" Moments later, both were dead. Shock across the empire. The empire had lost its heir. Murdered by a Serbian nationalist on imperial soil, at first, Europe treated it as another Balkan tragedy. Kings, presidents, and prime ministers had been killed before, and yet, the world had survived. This time, the killer's bullet hit not only a man, but the heart of a system built on pride and alliances. In Vienna, grief quickly turned to fury. Crowds gathered outside the Serbian embassy, shouting for war. Within hours, the Austro-Hungarian government began drafting a response, not a diplomatic protest, but a declaration of national resolve. The Kaiser's dilemma in Berlin. Kaiser Wilhelm II received the news while on his yacht. To him, the assassination was a chance to strike at Serbia and, by extension, Russia. He offered Austria a blank check of support. Whatever action you take, Germany stands behind you. Wilhelm believed a quick, localized conflict would restore respect to his ally and demonstrate German strength. He never imagined it would unleash chaos across continents. Austria wanted proof of German loyalty, and Germany wanted Austria to act quickly before international sympathy for Serbia could grow. On July 23, 1914, Austria-Hungary delivered an ultimatum to Serbia, a list of 10 demands so severe that no sovereign nation could accept them all. Serbia must suppress all anti-Austrian propaganda, and most outrageously, it must allow Austrian officials to participate in Serbia's own internal investigations. Serbia was given 48 hours to reply. Serbia, realizing the impossible position, appealed to Russia for help. Under Russian advice, Serbia accepted almost every demand, all but one: foreign investigators on Serbian soil. It was a polite refusal, meant to preserve national dignity. The rejection, however slight, was all the excuse they needed. On July 28, 1914, 1 month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. The first shots of World War I echoed along the Danube. Within days, the network of alliances began to pull every major power into the conflict. Russia, protector of the Slavs, ordered mobilization. Germany warned that mobilization meant war. France, bound by treaty to Russia, began preparing its own forces. What began as a regional quarrel was becoming a continental inferno. On August 1st, Germany declared war on Russia. The German army prepared to sweep through neutral Belgium to outflank the French defenses, a violation of international law. When German troops crossed the Belgian border on August 4th, Britain, bound by its treaty to protect Belgian neutrality, declared war on Germany. The great powers of Europe were now at war, but because they were bound by pride, fear, and promises that none dared break. The machine of alliances, built to prevent conflict, had locked itself into motion. The fate of empires was no longer in the hands of kings or diplomats. It was in the hands of soldiers. The illusion shattered. Young men rushed to enlist, waving flags, singing songs of glory. In Berlin, the Kaiser addressed the people from his balcony. In Paris, soldiers marched under confetti. In Vienna, even as black banners mourned the Archduke, excitement filled the air, a strange intoxication of patriotism and denial. None understood what awaited them. The trenches of the Somme, the gas of Ypres, the blood of Verdun. They went to war as if marching into a parade, not into hell. Beyond Europe, the tremors spread quickly. From India, Africa, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, men would soon be shipped to fight on foreign soil for causes they barely understood. In the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire watched carefully, unsure which side to join. In the United States, President Woodrow Wilson urged neutrality, but the seeds of involvement were already being sown. Within weeks, what had begun as the murder of 2 people in Sarajevo had become a world war. Sound of distant cannon fire and marching boots. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand was not merely a tragedy, it was the end of an age. The bullet that struck in Sarajevo tore through the heart of the 19th century and ushered in the brutal modern world. Reason had surrendered to pride, and as trains filled with soldiers rolled toward the front, few realized they were riding into a nightmare that would last for long years and claim more than 16 million lives. Samba strings, fade into silence. It began with a single shot. The shot heard around the world, a bullet fired by a young man who believed he was changing history for his people. That single act unleashed destruction on a scale humanity had never known. Empires would fall, borders would be redrawn.